This is delightful. I'm so glad we came here. Feel those vibrations at Camp Video Games.
Psst. Hey, Junior Counselor Josh, are you still awake? Yeah, I was almost asleep. Why? What's going on? Junior Counselor Josh, it's me, Junior Counselor Sean. Hey. I know you're the only other person here since Michael Mayonnaise disappeared. Okay, you're awake? Yeah.
Okay, hey, what's up, dude?
Dude, I'm chilling. I'm chilling.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like you nodded off a little bit.
No, I'm good.
Well, are you ready to talk about Final Fantasy VII, perhaps?
Is that what's happening?
Well, I figured,
This is like Christmas to me.
you've been real busy. You've been playing Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I know that the reason that we get into Final Fantasy games and why we like their sequels so much is because there's continuity. And now we get the full story. Let's go ahead, man. So let's get into Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you're listening to Camp Video Games. This is a podcast where we do in-depth reviews of video games as well as their adaptations to other mediums. We're going to be doing Final Fantasy VII. If you are a camper who's been with us for a while, we did our first quote-unquote season was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and the Legend of Zelda animated TV series.
That's quote-unquote correct.
And then we did what I like to refer to as filler episodes. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, you know how they do, there's a saga, there's the Frieza saga. And then there's a few short sagas.
Krillin gets his driver's license.
It was actually Goku and Piccolo tried to get their driver's license, even though they can fly at 1 billion miles an hour.
Yeah.
We are starting the next saga now. We are now onto the Cell saga, as it were.
The
Genova saga. Yeah. And we are going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII. And the adaptations for this game, they fall in line sequentially with the story.
Right.
I'm going to do my best to talk about Final Fantasy VII so that if some weirdo out there has never played it, they can play along.
That's right.
Kind of like a book club, and we're not spoiling for them.
I'm glad you said that, because the way I have been taking notes on my playthrough of this game, I am using the names and the story beats that the game dishes out as it happens. I am not coming. I've played the shit out of this game as a young man and as an old man. Mm-hmm. And so this is like talking about that good old time religion to me. But we're talking about it with fresh eyes.
Oh boy, when you talk good old time religion, yeah, boy howdy, do I have some things to say?
Yes, indeed.
I've played most of the, I forget how people refer to it, the anthology or whatever. The only things I haven't played are Dirge of Cerberus. There's like a mobile game where you follow along. You're a member of the Turks.
That was like a Nokia exclusive. That was only in Japan, I think.
Yeah, and then there is, unfortunately, Sean and I were so excited as we're recording this a month or two ago. Ever Crisis came out. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had the same experience as me of opening it, playing the first mission, going, "Oh, this is a gotcha pile of shit."
I literally saw how the gameplay unfolded in the first 10 seconds of playing it, and it's still installed on my phone for some reason, but I just closed it and never opened it again.
Yeah, so if you're a Final Fantasy mega fan, sorry, Ever Crisis, not canon, too much of a cash grab. We're not referring to it. I have no idea what happens in the new content. I don't fucking care.
Final fanboy to see.
Yes. And then also in terms of timeline, we're doing our best. This is sort of, I think, going to align with the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on February 29th of 2024. I don't know where we're going to be in releasing these on that date because we record this in advance, but I maybe will implement some remake talk as it comes up. So it might be a little spoilery for remake at times, but not jumping ahead.
Be forewarned then. Yeah,
I'm going to do my best to do that.
Between the two of us junior counselors, I have not played the remake or really any of the subsequent side story games in it. I have played Final Fantasy VII. I have watched Advent Children. I've watched the OVA that we're going to discuss down the line. There's cool stuff connected to Final Fantasy VII, but there's also too much stuff connected to Final Fantasy VII specifically. All of the branching offshoot religions, I guess.
Yeah, all those goddamn Protestants of Final Fantasy VII-ism. So yeah, let's open up into how we're gonna cover the game.
Yeah.
As we were discussing is sort of and this was my idea before you mentioned this, before we started rolling, is I want to do my best to explain why it was important to me as a 12-year-old boy who was ripe for the pickings.
Yes.
And how it holds up today and how it impacts me today. So it's sort of like connecting the dots between the two.
To get into the media sensation leading up to Final Fantasy VII's release, I mean, this game is quite commonly associated with the selling power of the PlayStation. This put boots in seats in front of the PlayStation. And when you compare Final Fantasy VII to games released around the same time, there was nothing at scale with what Square accomplished in this. I mean, it was a massive undertaking it was years and years in the making. What year, do you know offhand what year Final Fantasy VI was released? 93?
It was 94, 95. I believe it was in 1994.
Okay.
I want to say October 1994.
Okay. Real specific. Well, so this game was, it started, we're not going to go into the thing that you've heard every single historian review or talk about with Final Fantasy VII, all the drama between the Super Nintendo and all the different companies courting to get this game on their platform.
You can go find a soy-facing YouTube video about that.
We're cooler than that because we say cuss words.
We do cusses.
But I mean, Final Fantasy VII. Okay, if you are new to the Final Fantasy series, this is a pretty good starting point.
And many people were. That was the basis of the marketing.
And I'm now introducing the American market.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII was most people's first Final Fantasy in America. Sure, there's exceptions. There were still really good, pretty decent selling games for the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo. But when it really comes down to the mass market, Final Fantasy VII, and people are like, holy shit, I can't believe there's 6 other Final Fantasies. And then you see what the previous title looks like compared to Final Fantasy VII. And then you're like, oh no, we've gone too far. History is going to just continue to roll into the uncanny valley farther and farther.
And was this your first experience with it, or had you played the others?
This was the first Final Fantasy I owned. I played little snippets of Mystic Quest. That was the Super Baby, the Super Baby one for the Super Nintendo. I had a friend that had that.
They were like, Americans are too stupid to enjoy it, so they made Mystic Quest.
I played Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy as a kid, which was technically Seiken Densetsu 1, which was the prequel to Secret of Mana. Square is responsible for the best, I was about to say some of the best, but no, the best JRPG titles made at this point. I mean, we were lucky enough to be born into that.
Unless you're a Dragon Quest fan.
When, Final Fantasy was made in response to Dragon Quest. Blah, blah, blah. Go to Wikipedia.
That's not what we're here for.
No, we're here to say cusses and to do drugs.
So I had played... my chain was I was, something drew me to these Japanese role-playing games, just this Japanese aesthetic at the age of 10ish, which is when Secret of Mana came out. And I was just already such a picked on kid at school, and these were so foreign in the hobby of video games, which was already you're a loser. But I was just I eventually let myself dive into Secret of Mana. And that led to Chrono Trigger. And then that led to Final Fantasy VI. And then at that point, I had figured out emulation. And I got a fan translation of Final Fantasy V.
Nice. And good one. That's a really fun one in the series, too.
Yeah. Not my favorite at this point, but 4, 5, and 6 I'd played by this point. Yeah. So I was hyped for this.
I'll give a big shout out to my oldest, dearest friend Greg Stanforth, who I just doxed. But he got me into Secret of Mana, being a two-player.
Thank you, Greg.
Two-player action adventure RPG. Like we just spent an entire summer break playing that. We named our characters after ourselves. It was a whole thing. And that I could probably credit to what truly got me into JRPGs.
Yeah, I snagged my best friend, one of my best friends, CB, that way. He
I know CB.
Yeah, you know CB, because he went to college with us, and yeah, he was the one that like we played JRPGs through high school and college together. Sick. And would be like, dude, have you seen this Xenogears, man?
Well, I think the big factor in what sold Final Fantasy VII were the cinematics.
Yes.
It was, I mean, to just break down the, like, you know, historically, contextually, this game came on 3 compact discs, where one compact disc had exponentially more data available than a cartridge. And to have it's like you don't have one college student loan debt, you have 3 college student loan debts. It's just it's unfathomable how much they packed into it, and it turned it was not just like a game where you know, I mean, there are people who can speed run Final Fantasy VII, but like you get real good at Super Mario Brothers, and then it's just a fun little afternoon to run through it very quickly. What's your time? Like 20 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that?
Super Mario World, like 17-ish.
Yeah. So with this though, it's like, oh no. This is like you can spend more time playing Final Fantasy VII than cops get training.
Yeah. I'm double checking myself on SNES cartridge storage to compare. Super NES, I don't know. They were small. I don't have exact numbers, but they were, I think, started around like 32 like megabits, which is an eighth of 32 megabytes for nerds out there.
My eyes just glaze over with this technical talk.
I think they maybe eventually made it up in like the low 100 megabit in terms of data that they could hold. A single CD, for anybody who grew up burning CDs, can hold like usually 650, I think, megabytes. So we're talking exponentially more data than you could put it on a Super Nintendo cartridge. It really blows your mind what they did with Super Nintendo when you go back and look at it and those numbers. And this, wow. I did not have a PlayStation. I had...
you played it on PC, right?
I played it on PC originally. And I just want to tell my story with the game for a minute. Is there were, for all my real OGs way back on the RP Gamer forums. I don't remember what my screen name was at 11 years old, but that's where I hung out whenever I could be on the computer. And this was a website that, like, any RPG coming out on anything, people would just collect like anything they could, like any like articles coming out, any screenshots, any like short video clips. So like what was happening is like video clips of the game's FMVs were being released.
Yes. And
I would download them on my like 28.8 modem and wait for a couple hours to watch like, and I'd seen like big spoilery moments like 100 times before I got the game. And then they would also upload MIDI files of the music, all the soundtracks from games on this website. So I had like the soundtrack for this and like Super Mario RPG and the other Final Fantasies as MIDI files that, if I understand correctly, I was not an audio engineer at that point in my life at 11 years old, but I'm pretty sure the way it worked is like it was just the data of the notes and then saying like apply an instrument like this to it. So like every computer sound card might play them a little different. which is really interesting. So like the soundtrack I was downloading that I heard on my PC version was different than what people heard on the PlayStation version, I believe.
And if you've never gone out of your way to listen to MIDI files, it's like super simplified. It's very the tones are very robotic sounding. There's no real room for nuance or craftsmanship in MIDI files. It's
nowadays there is, but back then it was sort of just like this note is being held for this long and being played by something that sounds like a horn.
Yeah, that's exactly
it's kind of the way it worked.
Yeah, it's like the musical ASCII, or what is that? ASCII, ASCII, yeah.
And then the game came out a year later on PC after I'd been just absolutely spoiling it for myself.
Yeah.
I didn't care. It lived up to every little bit of hype. This is kind of like my joke, is that like being the right age for Final Fantasy VII when it came out made me think the internet was going to be this like amazing place where people can get really excited about like things together, and then you would get that thing and it would deliver on what it promised. Well, because it happened to me the first time and then it never happened again, and it's just been a cesspool ever since.
It's interesting. I think it's really just about how you choose to wade through that swamp water. Some are just waist deep and some just dive right in.
Yeah. So like I knew the approximate release date for the PC version. And so I would go do the grocery shopping at Sam's Club with my dad every week after I'd saved up the money, and just hope it would be there because they also had computer games.
Yeah.
And then eventually it was. I did not have a video card on my computer. And so it could run in something called, I think it was called like software render mode or something, in which like everything just looked janky as heck.
Jankier than the original release looked at.
Yeah, and keep in mind it looked incredible for the time. Yeah,
I think we're gonna be saying for the time a lot in this.
But mine looked super janky, and the big issue was when you used a summon. There's just something about that like I don't know if it was just too many polygons on the screen or what, but it was kind of a flip of a coin whether it would freeze the computer, like it would freeze the software and you'd lose your save because you'd have to reboot.
What, Shiva would attack the software?
I guess. And I played through the whole game that way. So I'd only use summons if I was completely desperate and willing to lose my progress.
Wow.
And then eventually I got a 8 megabyte Voodoo 2 graphics card that ran it like a dream. That's my story with Final Fantasy VII. Eventually got every other version released, I'm sure.
Well, I'm going to give a big shout out to my Aunt Laura for buying me this game on my birthday. I think I got it in 98. I've never been a guy that just like gets games as soon as they're released.
Yeah, I think this was kind of the only one for me
until
literally the past year when I made enough money to live.
Yeah, shout outs podcasting. Aunt Laura bought me this. I bought it specifically based on just all of the hype surrounding it. All of my friends that played video games, because I was lucky enough to actually have like a pretty supportive group of like nerd gamer friends growing up. And
I mean, just me and CB. Shouts out.
Shout out CB. Good writer actually.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy VII, my parents had we instead of a big screen TV like so many lucky kids had, we had a projector on our wall. And so, I mean, literally like the size of like this wall was my screen. I'm pointing at a very large wall right now, but like I was lucky to have like Final Fantasy VII on a massive scale.
That rules.
And it was just the best way to be exposed to this game, with big, great surround sound, and then just the visuals all just magnified to such a degree that it just came in crystal clear. And the way I would describe Final Fantasy VII to other 11-year-olds at the time is that like, yo, this game is definitely for adults. It's got cusses.
Yeah.
It's got death. It's got like
cigarette
monsters.
smokers.
Oh yeah, and like, but as an adult playing it, I'm like, yo, this is what kids thought adults did. Like it's very much it's made for children and young adults, but kind of immature young adults.
Well, it's made for teens. I think
that's a pretty good middle ground between kids and adults. Yeah, you're right.
But like a more innocent pre 9/11 age of teen.
Oh,
pre 9/11, pre like climate change doomsdayism, which is funny given the nature of the storyline. I just think kids are like more hardened, and like media is more cynical now. It's really hard to find things as sincere as the Final Fantasy series, which is why I still love it to this day, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
What draws me to Final Fantasy VII as a fully grown gamer at this point is I love watching those numbers go up.
Oh God.
You got a smaller number? You're gonna need to make that a little bit bigger.
That number bigger, baby.
Gotta bump those numbers. So okay, let's talk about how we're playing it these days. Josh and I have both downloaded the Switch remaster of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, not a remaster. It's just a
re-release.
Port. Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen it in HD in some degree. It's clearer than it looked on a janky old projector on a big wall, kind of probably blown out of proportion and not at the right scale.
Yeah, I don't know like to what degree. There's a little bit of upscaling on the 3D modeling. Yeah. But the backgrounds, which are like one of to this day the most like beautifully astounding.
They're pre-rendered backgrounds, so it's just like a flat image that they can then make the character look like they're navigating it, but they're really just. Well, yeah, go
Which
ahead.
I love it so much. They're just kind of stretched out. They don't look super great. They could look better with a remaster.
I remembered them looking better. Yeah. That's a very good point. But okay, this game is more than a quarter century old at this point, and I have to say that, and I just watch my hairs turn gray as I say that. I just watch my youth just fleet, and it's a game that introduces characters that have personalities, and it's very different than a lot of the games that we played leading up to this. I mean, we talked about Star Fox pretty recently, and like those were some pretty well-defined characters in Star Fox 64, which came out a year after Final Fantasy VII. But it's it was rare. That's Donkey Kong. But it was rare to have characters that you could actually relate to in some ways. And just to talk about the game's chief protagonist is a very moody, nihilistic, kind of bitter, jaded.
Oh, you talking about Squall Leonhardt?
I'm talking about a JRPG protagonist in general. No, we're talking Cloud Strife. And so for reference, I have my original Final Fantasy VII strategy guide written by David Cassidy. And it comes with these great little character bios of all the characters. I'm just going to give one detail that kind of shook me to my core. Cloud is, he's 21 years old, and that, to think of like how many people Cloud has killed in his life, it just kind of, I don't know, my heart goes out to him. And my life was not as difficult as his at 21, even though it felt that way. But Josh, let's talk about how this game starts and what happens when you press start on that. There's a great little, new game continue type of screen, and it's just a picture of a big old sword that's somehow standing up on its side, and there's a spotlight on it, and it's if you've ever read or watched the anime Berserk, it looks a lot like the sword that guy, was his name, Guts. I've never actually watched or read it.
I haven't either. Did that come out before this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, like they're just kind of picking and choosing. As great artists borrow.
Yeah, like they probably saw that and they go, oh,
that
we know American 12-year-olds are gonna love that.
that gigantic.
And boy, howdy, did we!
That gigantic sword. It's so subtle. I wonder if it's gonna get our themes across. But we press new game on this, and we go into this opening cinematic that. It's like you start a game with your best foot forward.
Oh my God, yeah.
This cinematic was like, it was worth the cost of admission. It was like, I have a movie. Like, I have a movie that I am in. It starts with this ethereal view of the stars, and it starts to make you feel real small in this big world.
Yeah. Well, before it goes too much farther, I want to quickly say, like, it foreshadows like every major thing that's going to happen in the game in this minute and a half.
It's what we call good film work.
Yeah.
There's just the sense of scale, and the stars start to turn green, and we see this pretty lady. She's got weird bangs, and she's got some flowers in a basket, and we're about to see just like this amazing cut. It's where it starts just on the stars. Dude. It goes in on this woman, and then you see she's in this whole lived-in world. The word "loveless." I think that's a play. That's playing.
Loveless is a very big piece of the whole anthology, actually. And then we
zooms out, and we get this logo. That fucking logo, bro.
Which, by the way, if you check the show out on YouTube, you get some visuals along. We're playing the video in the YouTube version. If you go check it out,
if you want to, the logo it's this meteor with this great tail behind it, and Final Fantasy VII, and then we cut to this train that's just rapidly going, and it's almost like it's headed straight for, like, you thematically think that it's headed straight for this woman, and then the game starts, and
we zoom in on the train pulling into a station, and then all of a sudden music changes and there's action happening in the game engine. We've switched from FMV as seamlessly as they possibly could at the time to in-game engine.
That's right,
which is incredible.
Cloud, well, we don't know what his name is yet, but the spiky-haired guy in a cute little purple-blue number, he gets like a hero's land when he jumps off the train. He does one of those like Iron Man, Spider-Man things when they land. I don't even know what that is, but the pre-rendered backgrounds on this game, with the way that the character models are, the aesthetic they chose, they're very flat colored, they're bold, they're cartoonish in front of a realistic background. It's very similar in terms of style to the I believe he was Belgian artist Ergay, who did Tintin. He developed his own style of illustration called the ligne claire, which means clear line, where the characters are very simple and bold. The backgrounds are very detailed, and it helps bring attention. It makes some very simple facial gestures or whatever it is that you choose to have your characters emote. It kind of heightens them. And that's really important for a game like this, where they don't give their characters very much to work with in terms of emotions, and in terms of expressing emotions, but because it's simple, the subtle things work very well with it. And just like props overall, I mean, we chose to do this because we want to talk about this game.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be a lot of glowing reviews, but I also want to talk, I want to be very honest about this game as I play it with eyes unclouded by Mako.
Yeah. Let me try to catch up on a few thoughts. I'll start right with where you were with the art style and the emotive. The way that it can emote this is actually something Square across from Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6 developed further and further and further really, really well. Is understanding like our characters are this block of, however, like whatever size grid of pixels, it's really hard to show emotion through that. So they learned how to over exaggerate the
Yes.
motions. And I don't know, it's not fresh enough in my mind right now, but I think they do an okay job carrying it into 3D. Like they were well aware of how to do that, how to make our characters stand out and emote amidst this very beautiful, detailed background.
A lot of shoulder shrugging.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're like, there's just a lot of the
Yeah.
They love that gesture in this game.
It's also worth noting they had gotten this idea and really played it excellently in Final Fantasy VI of like, with the resources we have, this presents itself best as a stage play. And with this, I feel that they had the confidence that like with these new tools, we don't need to do that. It could be more like a movie, but there's still some of that exaggerated emotion because of the awareness of like, yeah, this doesn't exactly look like real to life 3D. You know?
Yeah. So, okay. This game starts with a character jumps off of a train and he's got some backup that takes out a few, what we find out are they're basically military police. We've got our main character starts the game by killing cops. And
hell yeah, dude.
it starts off, the character's name is ex-soldier. And that's all we know. And this is like an 80s movie trope where it's like, one last mission. Like,
yeah. Does Barrett call him Merc within the first couple lines? I think so. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
but
early on he does.
You start off and you got this big old head of Super Saiyan hair. You got a sword that's definitely not overcompensating for anything. And you kill some cops.
It is designed to entice me. Exactly. It's like literally me. It's designed to make me go, I want to be that guy.
Something that I think is really clever about Final Fantasy VII is that they love working the number 7 into so many different facets. The game starts off and you're level 6. You have a fight that you have to fight immediately. What level do you think you turn? Level 7. You immediately turn level 7 in Final Fantasy VII in a place that you later learn is called Sector 7, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get to more 7s as it goes on, but your character deals 10 times the amount of damage as the enemies deal. They're shooting you with a machine gun, and then you're just like, nah, it's cute. Like your health barely goes down. So you've got right off the bat, a pretty overpowered character. And this is, I think, a big part of why JRPGs are so appealing to people. It's the power fantasy. Mm-hmm. You get to be powerful. You and your dear friend CB aren't getting picked on for being nerds anymore.
No, dude.
No,
we're using our extreme powers to save the world.
So, Josh, here's a very important question. When you play a Final Fantasy game, do you keep the default names?
Yes. 95% of the time, yeah. I had a lot of fun with my playthroughs of the Pixel remasters that you mentioned at the top of this. Right. That I think 1 and 3 they don't have any names, and they gave you a really long character limit. And I could use the Nintendo Switch suggested input word usage or whatever. So I'd type one letter and then pick the funniest word.
Oh, funny.
So I had one of my characters was Yahoo News. Another one was Berg Pages.
Oh man.
Magi Looper. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with those.
That's cute.
But yeah, I go defaults mostly.
I do defaults too. It's except a character that we meet pretty early on. I changed his name to Mr. T, but we'll get to him. But we learned that the folks that this ex-soldier is on a mission with, we got Biggs and Wedge and Jesse and Barrett.
Yes.
Biggs and Wedge, those are straight out of Star Wars.
Right. That was I forget which translator did this game, but that was his joke for a series of 3 years or so translating Squaresoft games, is there'd be 2 early sort of sidekicky characters that he'd named Biggs and Wedge after Star Wars.
It's like, I mean, Star Wars is like too popular.
Yeah,
it's like that's like it's not subtle or in any way like an Easter egg. It's just like, we did it. Like it is.
What was fascinating to me is like as a 10 to 12-year-old kid, pre-Star Wars prequels, when I see Biggs and Wedge cross over from Star Wars and don't know like, oh, that's because they just gave this job to he was probably like late 20s, early 30s guy, some nerd like me.
Yep.
That like he's just like, I don't know, like these deep cut names from Star Wars. I was like, what's going on here, man?
Now I'm shooting from the hip right now. Okay, I know it's Wedge Antilles, and I think it's Biggs Dark Lighter.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm shooting from the hip. Let us know in the
Wedge
comments.
Antilles is right, I know that.
Let us know in the comments if I got that right or wrong, because I'm not going to look it up. So we learned that they are an eco-terrorist group called Avalanche.
Yeah, dude.
And this game starts off with your character who is named Cloud. He's been hired on. He's like a freelance mercenary, and he is enlisted by this eco-terrorist group Avalanche to bomb the North Mako reactor, which is basically like, they're like, all right, come with us. We're going to Exxon headquarters, and we've got something for them. We were talking earlier about how this is a very pre 9/11 game.
Oh yeah,
boy howdy, is it a pre 9/11 game? So our hero is he's incredibly indifferent. He's like, yeah, once this job's done, I'm out of here. I don't give a fuck about the planet. Like, it's not my problem. It's just like, it's so nihilistic. It's just like, it's like how I felt as an 11, 12-year-old. I'm like, I don't care.
Just trying to get paid out here and mowing these lawns, you know?
That's right. Once I'm done with this lawn, I'm out of here.
I'm trying to burn as much gasoline, tearing this natural grass out of the ground as I can to get some bucks.
So a detail that I really love is once you select Barrett as your as your homeboy's character name, whenever a character joins your party, they walk into Cloud and just disappear. Mm-hmm. And I think that works on a thematic level if you talk about, like, you know, the different layers of the psyche and how every character is representative of some different facet of the self. But also, it just simplifies, you know, the amount of, assets on the screen.
Yeah, the amount for the tiny little PlayStation processor to deal with.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know other games where that they do that specifically, where they just walk into the protagonist and then disappear and then let the protagonist do it. It's a Final Fantasy trope, I guess. I mean, I think it happens because you always have one avatar representing the party. I think about Final Fantasy 1, you know, there's just whoever's at the top of the roster is going to be the character that navigates the overworld.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the first time they changed it. Definitely 15. All your boys run with you.
Yeah.
16, everybody runs with you.
Back in Secret of Mana days, they still had, you know, your characters were all just free flying, and you could have 2 other homies play with you, and it was great. And with this one, you know, this is very much a single player game, but this is one of those games that so many people played with a friend by their side, with a family member. I was talking with a friend whose dad played this with them when it first came out.
That rules.
And I was just like, man, my dad just didn't get it. He liked video games. He liked Doom. He liked Quake. He liked those, like, because he worked in a very tech office environment, so there was always
LAN
parties.
Around shareware.
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, once it got to console stuff, it kind of dropped off in terms of family bonding time. This was more just like, yeah, this is Sean's time. So this opening segment of the game is you're making your way toward the center of this reactor, and Barrett, when we get to the placing of the bomb on this reactor. So they explain that this is a mako reactor. I always pronounced it as mako as a kid, but
yeah, same.
Different, you know, different adaptations that we'll get to. They made it very clear how it's pronounced. And Barrett insists that Cloud plants the bomb on the reactor.
Yeah. Can we, before we go to the bomb planting, talk about one scene before that, the elevator scene?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, right, because we're going along with Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, and they seem to know the codes to get you deeper into the belly of this reactor. And at one point, right, like you take an elevator ride with Jesse.
Yeah, with Jesse, and I believe Barrett's on here too. Yeah, Barrett's here too. But this is because this is like sort of the lay of the land, and part of what I love about the game is the world building. Is that they do this thing with Cloud and Barrett talking on the elevator, and Barrett is trying to convince Cloud to be on their side, ideologically. And Cloud's like, I just don't care. And what's great about this is it does exposition without doing the, as you know, the planet is dying because we're pulling up Mako, blah, 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 blah. It makes sense that like Cloud has been working for the fascist like corporation,
which in this game is called Shinra.
Yeah. And we get and Barrett has to like try to convince him, like, because Cloud's been propagandized as far as Barrett's concerned, and that line, the planet's dying, Cloud, it's just
planet's dying, Cloud.
It's like the most succinct thing. Like, this is like when I'm on Twitter and I see some like technocratic, like centrist liberal talking about what we need to do is a quantitative easing of housing over a time of blah, blah. I just like, I take that screenshot and I just reply with,
yes.
It's just like, we don't have fucking time for this, bro. The planet is dying.
Yeah, just
Barrett
get to the point,
best.
Barrett. Yeah. Barrett is the best way to radicalize an impressionable young mind. You know, I wonder how many people joined Greenpeace after playing Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll get to it, but like I'll just state now, like, legitimately, and like, even this was before we had committed to like, this is the next like game we're gonna cover. I was talking to my girlfriend once, and I was like explaining basically that like my spirituality is basically the live stream from this game, which we'll talk about in much more depth later.
Yeah.
Like, that is truly like where my spirituality lies. Ideologically, like, I became sort of anti-corporatist, anti-capitalist, like anti-authoritarian from this game. Like I joked in my playthrough, like, I was like, I didn't know what like being like a Marxist was, what being an environmentalist was. I didn't know all these words for these things, but this game made me those things. Like, it's wild.
And you get to race ostriches. So Barrett wants Cloud to get his hands dirty here. Like, he's
we
saying,
can jump ahead to the bomb planting.
He's saying, like, I don't trust you. Like, I need to keep my eyes on you. So I want you to plant the bomb that's going to be responsible for unknown loss of lives. Cloud, it seems like as we're playing through, it's like, does Cloud have epilepsy, or there's some sort of like psychic interference with Cloud where he is going to place the bomb and this message just pops up. It says, watch out. This isn't just a reactor. And, you know, we just pressed start on this game, you know, at this point, maybe 10 minutes ago. And already they're saying, it's not what you see. It's not what it seems. It's not what it seems. And it's introducing just this intrigue where it's like, what's up with Cloud? Like, why is he ex-soldier? Why is he on this mission? How did he get in touch with these people? Why is he having a nervous breakdown before he's going to commit genocide? Not genocide, but you know.
Which I think they touch on a little bit in this version. That Jesse designed the bomb, and it was maybe more powerful than anticipated. But in the remake, they really double down on like something weird was going on with like the bomb doing more destruction than they planned, and Jesse's character gets fleshed out more. As,
Interesting.
Like, there's a whole chapter about her like trying to figure it out and dealing with her like guilt about it and stuff.
Now I am become death, destroyer of Mako.
Yeah,
reactors.
you get Jesse's Oppenheimer arc.
Side note, I finally watched the Barbie movie. I really loved it.
Yeah, it's all right.
In terms of like corporate shell like soulless movies, it was quite self-aware, and I appreciated that. I don't know if it would be a good double feature with Oppenheimer though. Instead, we did a double feature with a movie called Switchblade Sisters, which is a gritty 70s crime drama that does not age very well, actually. But, okay. Something happens to Cloud's brain, and he's doubling over. He's obviously like having some sort of like psychic pain as a result of his actions. And then he's like, I'm fine. Like,
he's like, I'm fine. Let's fight this scorpion that's dropping
that's
on us
right.
after I plant this bomb.
We get such a cool... okay, one of the main appeals of Final Fantasy VII is just the cool enemy models. Like, it's like you buy this game, and then all of a sudden, I've got like 500 action figures that I can just look at over and over again. It's so cool.
Yeah.
This thing looks like it's straight out of Mega Man X. It's a big robot scorpion with gun arms and a big tail laser. It's the attack pattern that this boss introduces, right? Where it's like you don't want to attack it while its tail is up, or it'll do a punitive attack that does damage to both Cloud and Barrett. Barrett, should mention, he's got a Gatling gun on his hand, and he looks like Mr. T. Cloud, he looks like Goku mixed with Link. Right? Like, I don't know how else to describe him, but
yeah, this is maybe where it's worth noting. This is the first Final Fantasy that Tetsuya Nomura took over character design, and it's a radical departure. This speaks to sort of just the entire world building. There's this steampunk aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's more like it's steampunk like meets Blade Runner.
That's
kind
right.
of
dystopian steampunk.
And we didn't talk about this during the opening FMV, but like it builds that world in a minute and a half.
Yes.
You go, I understand what this is. I don't know all the mysteries of it, but I get what I'm looking at. And I just want to like quickly contrast that to like everybody, not everybody, but there's a lot of Final Fantasy 16 discourse when it came out a few months ago about like, oh, why do the old fans just hate it because it's not turn-based and this and that and that. And like, I'm sorry, if you compare the openings of these two games, it is no question that like this one grabs you and you go, I'm fucking in.
7 does.
7 does.
Yeah.
16, you get this wild spectacle like FMV, and then you get like this hour and a half slow walk to the big inciting incident. And I'm sorry, like it just doesn't do it for me the same way.
Yeah.
And that is a valid criticism that some people just refuse to accept.
Well, I mean, the company knew that this was going to be a lot of people's first impression of a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
So they really did. They just like they made this opening bombastic and like intriguing. Like there's mystery into it, and it's raising questions. It's not just giving you spectacle. It's also establishing a lot of mystery and a lot of fill in the blank. Like what's up with that? What's up with that? Yeah. It's good stuff.
I'm going to reflect just a little longer on Final Fantasy 16 because they again wanted it to be people's first Final Fantasy, and in some ways they succeeded. But one of the ways they tried to do it is when they started development, and I don't know this for a fact, but you can kind of put the timeline together. They said, "Wow, Game of Thrones is the biggest thing in the Western world right now. Everybody's obsessed with it." So that hour and a half like prologue that I was talking about is literally, and I've only seen 2 episodes of Game of Thrones. I've read the first half of the first book. It's like not for me, but it is like beat for beat Game of Thrones.
That sucks.
Yeah, it sucks so bad. And like eventually, like the world and the characters get a little more interesting and move away from that.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh, you guys just saw something and thought we can cash grab that. And for me, it fails because on top of it being a big thing I wasn't into, it's 7 years too late because
Yes.
that's how long ago they had to start developing.
That's the problem with trying to jump on fads with these big projects.
With a AAA game that takes years and years and years to develop.
You're going to be wearing last season's wardrobe.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty
not
bad.
and it's going to be, and it's right when you're on the top of the pedestal and everyone's paying attention. You're like, oh, you're still wearing that?
Yeah. Okay. I apologize for taking things away because I want to lasso back to that boss fight for one more detail. You brought up the tail being up.
Right.
And people dispute the quote unquote mistranslation. I don't have the exact words up. They popped up in the video.
Attack while its tail is up, and
it says attack while its tail is up. It's gonna, and then that's one block of text.
Yes, and so everyone goes attack, and then
the next one is it's gonna counter. And so people are like, that's a mistranslation. I go, no, you're misreading the tone of Cloud's explanation. It's Cloud is saying not attack while its tail's up. It's gonna counter. He's going attack while its tail's up, and it's gonna counter with the tail laser.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that's been a criticism of that opening fight. This is the first big boss fight, and it seems like they're giving you a little muddled direction on it.
Yeah,
it's almost like you need to like. It's saying don't because this is a game that has been criticized by a lot of people for being a game you can just press attack over and over again and you will never die.
Mm-hmm.
And
to this point, as far as we've played so far, that's pretty much what I've done, and I'm having a great time.
I've seen that in play, and I'm like, yep, that's it's fine because like the combat is like it's something I'm excited to talk more about as more
like
facets of the combat are unlocked, because right now you have 2 commands that you can basically do. 3 commands. You can do attack, magic, or run. And
you got some items, I think.
Oh yeah, and items. And that's the basic. You play any Final Fantasy, you're like, I get this. That all makes sense. We're starting off very small, and as it progresses, there's these new facets that come in that are maybe not even directly linked to combat, but they can only be used during combat. We'll get to that later, but during this boss fight, so we're fighting this really cool robot scorpion. It's imposing. It's got it's got different sets of attacks. It's reactive. It has gives to whether or not you should attack it or not. So you wait till its tail goes down. So there's some patience that's required.
And this was from Final Fantasy IV through this. This was a common first boss fight thing to teach the active time battle system.
Yes.
Which I'll throw in one more critique of. The battle system so the active time battle system means
ATB.
The counter keeps going, like even when you're not doing anything. Whereas in the original game, it would be
it's your turn, and it's going to be your turn until you make a turn.
It's your turn to choose what all 4 of your characters are going to do, and then the enemy has chosen all of their characters, and then it's going to like play that out.
Yes.
Whereas this, it's like it's constantly in motion, which is cool. But then you can play it in active mode or wait mode.
Yes.
And active mode means that even when you're menuing and making decisions,
the enemy's getting ready to do their next attack.
That the enemy can continue to attack.
Exactly.
And it's so silly in retrospect, like very contrived that like, ooh, hard mode of the game is how fast can you navigate your menu?
It's in some ways it's very similar to the combat in Secret of Mana, where if you remember, you don't just spam attacks. You have to wait till a bar reaches, and then you've got a full powered attack. So it encourages you to wait. And your enemies in Secret of Mana, they'll just be jumping around making attacks too. And while you're waiting for your attack to get to its optimal charge, they'll do whatever they want to you. And you've got the only thing that makes it different from a turn-based RPG is that you can just move around while you're doing this. But otherwise, it's pretty much an active time battle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the difference here is though, like the active mode being that, like, when I'm deciding, okay, do I want to use fire, ice, or bolt or whatever? Yeah. That the enemy can continue attacking if I have it set to active, which is like in retrospect, just seems like a contrived way to add difficulty is like memorizing and quickly navigating a menu. Is like, that's not very action packed in this game where I'm a guy with a giant sword. You know? It's just learning how to navigate menus, which I guess is, a good work skill. It's good, part of the efficiency of my job in the modern computer age is how fast can I navigate menus I've memorized.
That's right.
So we were really just training kids for jobs in STEM.
Yeah, it's just like, you don't need a lunch break. You just bring your lunch to your desk and,
Training that. Anyway, yeah.
So this guard scorpion, he'll damage actual damage to your players.
Yeah.
This is the first time
he puts you at risk.
as I've played it that I had to use a potion. Potions are, easy items. Anyone can use them. What Final Fantasy VII does differently from a lot of its predecessors is it basically, there are still characters have their job types, but they are not married to them necessarily. Like Cloud is, he seems like a paladin where he's like a magic using fighter or a mage or something along those lines.
Yeah,
a red mage, I guess, if we're talking classic Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I guess sort of. And then Barrett's
like
because he comes with a gun, you can put him in the back row. That makes him kind of like a archer type guy.
And then, as we go on, we'll get to other different characters as well. But in this one, like people have, it's more based on their stats than it is about their job type. Like, Cloud has naturally high strength. And he's kind of balanced. Anyway, it does away with like, you don't just have like, oh, I have a team of, the first time I played Final Fantasy I did three fighters and one red mage so that I could have like all the damage output and then still some room for magic and some room, black and white magic.
My dumb ass picked a black belt.
That's cool though.
They're worthless.
So, this is also the first time that I had a character come to a limit break, which is an interesting combat mechanic in this, where there's a bar that is alongside your character in the battle menu that fills up whenever you accrue damage. Once you've accrued enough damage, it's like every time your limit break starts, it's like Goku's activating a Kaioken, right? Where there's that cool blast of fire around them. And then they do, depending on who the character is, they typically do an extra powerful attack that is not reduced to range or... it's not reduced to range. Like as you go further along, there'll be characters, or there'll be enemies that you can't physically attack because they're flying. So you need either a ranged attack like from Barrett's gun or a magic attack like bolt or ice or fire or whatever it is you use. The limit break as a game mechanic is really fun because it actually it makes you want to get damaged so that you can hurt people even more. It's like life.
You can strategize taking damage as a strategy.
Yeah. It'll help speed up fights. I mean, you can just a limit break will typically kill a standard enemy in one hit, like across the board. But depending on how you play, sometimes you save them up, but also the game to level up your limit breaks, you need to use it a specific number of times, or you need to kill a specific number of enemies
with that character, which is something that I didn't know till maybe my third or fourth playthrough of this game. So only Cloud and one or two other people had all their limit breaks.
It's very it really helps diversify the gameplay, and it makes what could be described as a monotonous combat system, and it helps just add some variety, make it that much more interesting and eclectic. So bomb is set. They've defeated the guard scorpion. The bomb is set, and now the clock is ticking.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes on the clock.
10 minutes
to double back what you just did.
Yes,
which
and
is
it's great.
Your first time around, probably a little intimidating.
It is, and it's great. I mean, it helps really. It encourages memorization. It rewards repeat plays and just builds a familiarity with these surroundings, which you're going to kind of come back to again and again. And as Cloud is escaping from the reactor, he sees Jessie, and she seems to be doubled over. You can decide whether or not to help her. This is where, excuse me, this game offers a lot of choice in how your character interacts with NPCs. So much so that it's like overwhelming in terms of like, nowadays with games, your charisma, it's all these different factors that can be manipulated in the game's mechanics have an impact on how players or on how NPCs like respond to you. I'm thinking specifically of like the Fallout series where it's like I can turn my intelligence all the way down. I can turn my charisma all the way down so that people just immediately hate me when they meet me. And I'm like, just like real life. But in this, it's more about, do you choose kindness?
Yeah.
And
there's no major like penalty either way.
No. It's not like you're going to miss out on like a massive chunk of the game if you're rude to somebody.
Well, there's one major thing it impacts. We'll talk about more when we
get to
that flower girl in a minute.
Yeah. But we see that Jessie, she's bent over, and Cloud can run over to her, and her leg got stuck in the scaffolding. It's a fucking nightmare, dude. The clock is ticking, and then like you're just worried about getting out of the blast radius, and then some inept sidekick is like, help, and you're like, fine, and you got to help her a couple times. Cloud helps Jessie up. They escape in the nick of time, even though the clock when I did it was like well within it's like, oh, and never mind, now it's exploding with 8 minutes left on the clock. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's pre-scripted. It's whatever. Big boom. They absolutely succeeded in destroying that reactor.
They blow up quite a significant chunk of this giant disk city we've been introduced to.
Yes, and they're just like they're talking about the big picture when they reconcile with what they've done. They're like, this should help the planet. This will save the planet. And no mention of the fact that Cloud just killed 40 cops on top of hundreds, if not thousands, of factory workers.
We don't know how automated this place is.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of people around.
But again, this is where Remake, I think, does a better job telling the story.
I should hope so, man, because
some ways
this is a big thing that they do, and it's kind of glossed over, or it's just like it's the opening mission, and you're like, oh yeah, we just we did a bit of terrorism,
right? So Remake is told in chapters, and blowing it up is the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 is going through, I forget which sector of the city this is, and making your way back to the Sector 7 slums.
Yeah.
And the difference is you truly feel in the NPCs like, oh, we devastated a civilian area.
Yeah. Collateral damage.
We caused a lot of serious collateral damage. And I want to, this is where I'm going to let myself talk a little bit about Remake and some things that I think it kind of misses from this is chapter 2 immediately introduces us to the game's villain.
That's a mistake.
Yes.
They just can't wait to get to it.
Yeah.
Like, because going back to Ever Crisis, how the first screen has the game's villain in it. And you're just like, okay.
Right.
It's like the cinematic law that Steven Spielberg introduced with Jaws. wait to show the monster, build up the tension.
And yeah, this OG version of the game does it amazingly. It's so good. Like I'd spoiled the shit out of the game for myself because I was just too excited, and I still was super creeped out when we eventually get there. Whereas here, it's like, oh, the villain is this thing that Cloud sees and is like in its corporeal form. His theme music is introduced. They blow a lot of like the music that in the original has huge impact on way smaller moments.
They just can't wait. I mean, it's
because they want to give you that nostalgia factor.
That's the problem with remakes and with
and breaking them into 3 parts. So after the explosion, they're kind of like, oh, we'll split up. We'll go through here.
They're going to rendezvous back at headquarters.
Yeah.
And so Cloud splits off from the rest of them.
And we meet the flower girl that we saw in the intro. And all right, so there's this moment where Cloud has to first introduce himself to Flower Girl. She says, what happened? Your options are, you'd better get out of here, or nothing, hey. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. There's these decisions you make, and there's like a point system behind it.
Yes.
And I talked about this on stream for a while.
Give a follow Caro's manager on YouTube.
Yeah. Or on Patreon, I put up the playlist of the games as
Patreon.com/campvideogames.
Yes. So yeah,
$5 a month. $5 a month.
He has to make this decision between those two options, and what this is leading to is. It won't be too spoilery. I'll just say it's a date mechanic.
Yes.
It's a romance mechanic. It's very common.
Let me just say that this really misled me on how romance works.
Yeah, well, so
in real life.
These options, you'd better get out of here, is the right chivalrous thing to say.
Yeah, there's been a massive explosion. You see all the smoke billowing out of what used to be a reactor, and you notice how it's not there anymore, and your eardrums have just been completely blown out. Like, do you think maybe we should get out of here?
Yeah, but if you as player are trying to romance this character, I'm pretty sure the option that gives you points for that is nothing. Hey, let me chat you up a bit. Let me put you in danger a little longer. Yeah. I was losing my mind because like all of them are like this throughout the parts of the game that I've played so far.
Yes.
So, but this is the introduction to Aerith. I will be calling her Aerith. That is her original name. Sean, I don't know if you're sticking with Eris, the translated name, because I don't know if that's just what fit in the original or what.
I am playing a video game, and on the screen, the video game gave this girl a name, and her name is Eris. I understand. Okay, guys, we've all been on Wikipedia. We've all listened to other things about Final Fantasy VII. Did you know it's a combination of air and earth? That's great. That's not what's on my screen. Therefore, I'm like, it's like I read a mistranslated King James Bible, right? Yeah. Like, it's not the Red Sea, it's the Reed Sea. I'm not actually reading that book. But let me just say that like the retconning of the Flower Girl's true and proper name, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I understand that there's mistranslations, but this is a massive one. Like, I can't understate enough like how it rubs me the wrong way that like they're just like, oh, that's not actually her name. It's like, what if I've been built up on lies? Like, I don't know. It's just like I feel like I've been drinking what I thought was water. They're like, actually, that was just Mountain Dew. And it's like,
I came around to it that with the remake, it's Aerith. So like, that's canon now for me.
Yeah.
I don't think that hard about it, but I did change her name to Aerith in this playthrough.
Nice.
That's the only one I changed.
I changed a future character we'll get to's name to Nanaki.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Anyway, Cloud chooses to buy a flower from the Flower Girl. Mm-hmm. And we'll just save that for later. It's a nice little thing that has some payoff later. So this also should be noted that the Flower Girl was in the same area that we saw in the opening cinematic.
Yeah.
Just
that poor goblin bar has been destroyed.
Yeah, that sucks, man. Yeah, and the Loveless thing. I don't know if we're gonna have another opportunity to talk about Loveless in this, but you say that serves an important role in adjacent titles.
Yeah, so I'll give a like sort of Cliff's notes on Loveless. Is the antagonist of Crisis Core is like obsessed with this play Loveless, and it's you hear a lot of passages from it. It's in their world something like a Shakespearean drama or something.
Yeah.
Like it's this very like poetic prose, and he quotes from it a lot, and he follows it sort of as prophecy.
Okay.
And it's like all that is pulled from just they were like, wow, we had this really stark, eye-catching word we just threw in the opening scene. Like, wow, what can we build from that? Which I think is a lot of fun, like to do world building based on that. As they were just like, I don't know, Loveless is a fun English word. And I think it might be a reference to something else as to like why they chose it in the visual in the original. But yeah, I think deciding to adapt it was them just being like, I don't know, there's this intriguing visual we have. Let's build it out and make some more lore out of it, which is fun.
There's a pretty good musician named Lydia Lovelace in our world.
Not a reference to her, but I
No.
do feel like it might be a music reference
Yeah.
that I'm missing. Yeah.
As Cloud starts, so he buys in my playthrough. Cloud is nice to the flower girl, and he buys a flower. It's one gil.
Same.
And,
I'll wait to ask this question. Keep going.
And then it's him, Cloud, making his way back to the hideout. So we get to just see some more of Midgar. That's where this is all happening, which is that's a Norse mythology reference. There's a couple of them in here.
Yeah.
They reference all sorts of different world mythologies.
Well, yeah, somebody's written a book, I think, specifically on the Norse references in this game.
I'd actually be very interested to read that. And we see it's great as Cloud's making his way through. We see like some like anti-Shinra graffiti and like some Avalanche specific graffiti. So it's like they're like this isn't just these people going on a mission. This is their home, and like they are trying. They're doing the best that they can. But Cloud, he gets hounded by more of these fucking cops. Man, they just can't leave this guy alone. And you can choose to fight them. I always choose to fight, just because again, numbers go up.
Yep.
Get more experience every opportunity. But they eventually compel Cloud to jump onto the top of a full speed ahead train that just like blasts at the perfect timing. It's like Marty getting on the DeLorean when he jumps off the roof. It's always the perfect timing. This is I think at this point Cloud jumps on the train, and it cuts to the members of Avalanche. And they're all ruminating. They think Cloud's dead at this point. They think that he got caught by the cops. He got by the cops. They don't know. And Cloud does this great hero's entrance.
Yeah, which is really fun because we see him jump on the train. Then we cut to them being like, I don't know, he must be dead.
Yeah. Cloud does this great, entrance. He like jumps through the door of this cargo area of a passenger train. And it's become pretty apparent through their like brief interactions that Jessie has got a thing for Cloud.
Yeah. Oh boy, howdy, does she have a thing for him in the remake?
I believe you.
Oh, it's so horny. It's a lot of fun, actually.
Is it like I'm immediately think of Paya from Breath of the Wild.
Little that at a even at a higher level. There's like a point where she's like, "Please come sleep with me tonight." Basically,
hell yes. Hey, there's plenty of Buster Sword to go around.
Yeah, she's a horny gal. We love a female video game character who gets to be strong and celebrate being horny.
Yep.
And it's like in a way that it's not like pandering to you as like the horny player a little bit.
Well, they paint it in a way
because
that
he's like timid about it.
well, Jessie seems to be
Like she is the power.
Jessie seems to be like it's I don't think she's like this with every guy that she's attracted to. It's that she sees something special in Cloud, and like it's meant to really make, you know, if you're the player and you're like, oh, Cloud's the shit, like I want to be just like him. I don't have a positive male role model in my life. I'm just gonna model it off this video game character. It helps your self-esteem, and you're like I'm the shit.
Yeah.
Women love me
Until you find out he's got no riz, as the kids say.
I don't even know what that means.
He's got no game. He's
Oh,
got
yeah.
no, you know, like when all the girls hit on him, he's like, what?
So apparently, when Cloud jumps in on the train, Jessie's like, oh, let me wipe all this coal from your face. And it's not portrayed on the character as we see it on the screen, but it's
Thankfully.
like, yeah, it's like, oh, she says, oh, Cloud, your face is pitch black. If you phrase that a different way, you could get canceled.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those tender moments where it's like, you know, someone is like, oh, hey, come here. And they like, you know, they lick their thumb and they get that little smoosh off you. It's like, it's showing immediate, like, physical intimacy, not necessarily sexual, but there is a closeness between us. And I am here to make sure that, you know, you look your best self, because she wants to see that full face. She doesn't want to see covered in coal.
Mm-hmm.
So they burst into the passenger section of the train, and Barrett scares off all the passengers. It goes through an explanation. It's a great way to introduce Midgar. Jessie shows Cloud a scale model on a video screen that explains the railway system.
Which, once again, a great way of expository without going, as you know, it's like, no, she's the techie person who likes to poke around at these things, and she's trying to flirt with him by showing off how into it she is.
Yeah. And it just helps kind of establish like the scale of how big Midgar is, and how it's just like, I mean, it is a fucking nightmare. Like Midgar is hell on earth, dude. It's, I mean, to talk about it, like it physically, there's this gigantic plate above the slums, and there's no natural sunlight that comes into the slums. Everyone's living under these plates that are, it's just like, the sword of Damocles is hanging over their head, and I got a feeling someone's going to be cutting the thread.
Yeah. Did you see Parasite?
No.
So Parasite.
That was the Korean thriller?
Yeah. It uses this same model of like physically displaying class as a literal tiered system, where the lower class lives on the literally underneath the upper class. And there's a part in the movie, minor spoiler for Parasite, where there's like a big flood, and you see like our lower class protagonists are like, their life is like ruined by this flood.
Yeah.
Like their house is just, everything's ruined. And then the rich people, the antagonists who live on top, like it cuts to them, like their next scene is like, oh, we really needed that rain, you know, or something like that. Oh, man. You know,
that's rough.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And in this game, in the remake, they build it out more with the extra scene, or the extra chapter I mentioned earlier. You go to Jessie's parents' house, and they live on top of the plate.
Oh, she's a child of privilege.
Yeah. Well, you learn that it's like a layer cake type thing. It's like that old political cartoon of like the way the world works. It's like all the workers on the bottom holding up the tiers of like the aristocracy and the military and the clergy, and then the emperors or the kings and the whatever. And her family is like, they're like comfortably middle class because her dad was a some kind of scientist for
Makes
Shinra.
sense.
He wasn't like a grunt working the factory. He was a knowledge worker.
Yeah.
And I won't spoil anymore.
That explains
that.
Jesse being technically proficient as well. Then in this kind of in this dystopian hellscape that they're all occupying, she's special because she seems to have that privilege behind her.
Yeah,
but that also explains her motivations of being a good person doing the right thing.
Yeah, another fun detail you can like suss out is like if you explore her house. I think this is the only way to learn about it. Is like you learn she was a actress at the Gold Saucer, which is like an entertainment center.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Like she has dreams of being an actress, but like has been pulled into this like fight for the planet. Which is it's just like a lot of great rich character building that they add to the remake. Yeah,
it's that's one of the good things about remakes and about like reboots, because I think at this point like the Final Fantasy VII chapters that we're getting, it's more of a reboot or a reimagining than a remake, right? Because a remake implies that like there's something being strictly adhered to, whereas like no, they're like fleshing everything out.
Yeah, we could talk about that more when we wrap this whole thing. If you either play it or feel like having it spoiled.
Yeah. So yeah, we get to see the scale of Midgar and how what they destroyed was like it's like they just destroyed an entire like city block.
Yeah, I mean it's an eighth of the power supply for this megatropolis that. As we play the game, you get a sense like this is where most of the world's population probably lives.
That's right. Yeah. There are no other, just like looking forward in my mind's eye, I don't think there are any other like cities of this scale in the world map.
This is like a New York or a Hong Kong or Beijing or what it's like Delhi is like the biggest city in India or something like that.
Another like title that I think Final Fantasy VII owes a lot to is Akira. With Neo Tokyo as like kind of being a really good example of like what they were trying to get with Midgar. But she explains that like the sectors of Midgar, they used to have names, but they're so old that they've been forgotten, so they just gave these different sectors numbers, which is really interesting when you look at this, like, this megalopolis, and everything looks like it's like covered in pipes and like, wires and electrical doodads, and it's like, wait, this place is super old? It's like, it looks, I mean, high technology that's aged, that has then been replaced with kind of primitive technology. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, we have robot scorpion monsters, but we also have like, this guy's using a sword, and like no one's batting an eye at it. It's that fun cross section, or where sci-fi meets fantasy. Yeah,
and that's Tetsuya Nomura, baby. He's like the character designer who likes to mix these things in this way. I think another thing that just occurred to me when you just were describing the changing of sectors to numbers, it's almost it's a good strategy if you are a fascist, like autocratic corporation to erase the old culture.
Yeah, of course.
So people have nothing to cling to as like, this is a thing we're defending.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
So Barrett calls the plate above them that fucking pizza.
Yeah,
that's the bomb, man. Like this game.
Does he call it a rotting pizza?
No,
or is that just the name of the song? There's a song called "Beneath the Rotting Pizza."
Whenever Barrett curses in this game, it's always represented like as it would be in like a cartoon with the ampersand, exclamation point,
which
asterisk.
Is another great thing about the remake is they cleaned up Barrett's character as he was a black character being designed by Japanese people of what they thought an American black character should be,
like what they thought a cool black character should
be. They swung and missed at times, and in the new one, like they did a really great job making it so he's still this aggressive, edgy guy, but like you see like how sincere and loving he is, and there's like the moments like he takes his glasses off. And like he just has like these sincere, loving eyes. You're like, Oh, my
Yes.
dear sweet boy.
That's really a relief to hear, because in this iteration, on our premiere view of Barrett, he is a caricature.
Yeah, not a great caricature.
That's absolutely right. So while they're kind of waxing on about life in the slums, and Cloud compares that life to a train on rails, and that implies like a belief in predestination and fate, and it's already been recorded. It fits his nihilistic viewpoint, where it's like you can't change what's happening. Like everything is going to happen the way it has been ordained. Like there's no point. There's no point in fighting. I'm doing this just because I need money, and like that's his main motivator right now. And the idea of predestination, right? Like, you know, the whole entirety of the future ahead of us has already been figured out, and like just sit back and let it happen. Let it wash over you. You're just laying on a beach, and the water's going to hit you eventually.
And the interesting thing about that is that this is going to continue to be a motif throughout the rest of this game, using the train as the analogy.
Yep.
And then very aggressively in the remake.
I believe that.
Yeah. This idea of destiny is fate preordained, et cetera, et cetera.
So Barrett's the leader of Avalanche. That should be said. And everyone answers to him. He has a hard time holding his authority over Cloud. He feels threatened by Cloud and as a leader. And that'll lead to some interesting interactions later. But at this point, you know, Cloud is not. He's not a revolutionary. He's a mercenary, and he doesn't get paid until he goes back to the headquarters. So the whole gang, they disembark from the train, and they arrive at Tifa's seventh heaven, which is a bar, which is also the headquarters for Avalanche. There's there's this great view of the plate over Sector 7 as Cloud's going in between the train station and the Sector 7 slums where Tifa's seventh heaven is. So many sevens. You see what I mean? Like Cloud turns level 7 immediately. He's in Sector 7. He goes to Tifa's seventh heaven, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we get a view of like, oh, here's the support pillar holding the plate above Sector 7. It's
more foreshadowing.
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Chekhov's plate.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of those so far.
Yes.
A lot.
Getting back to the bar, Barrett goes in, and it's funny how like irresponsible he is with his gun. Because he just shoots his gun in the bar to scare people out.
You kind of need to like abstract how powerful guns are for this game to make sense.
Absolutely. I mean,
like you have to think of them almost as like airsoft rifles.
Well, literally, the damage that a cop's gun did to Cloud was like 4 damage.
Yeah.
Cloud has at least 300 health. He's dealing 40 damage with a swing of his sword, and getting shot by a burst of machine gun fire does 4 damage. It's silly. So Barrett scares off all the bar patrons. I guess maybe he's got some blanks in there or something too. You know, he can like switch it to like, this is just to scare people.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like throughout the whole game, like the way guns work, it's like more like a slightly more powerful BB gun or air rifle.
It's like when Nappa gets shot by the farmer when he first lands on
it like bounces off of
him.
He's
He's just
something.
like, what are you doing? Like he catches the bullet and then throws it back at the truck and explodes.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like your gun is guns are for weak people in this game. Barrett is the exception because the gun's attached to him, I guess. Yeah. But Cloud walks into the bar, and a little girl says Papa, and you're like, Cloud is not a dad. Like, and it turns out that she is the she was referring to Barrett. She thought Cloud walking was Barrett. Marlene, little white brunette girl. Barrett, big black man. No mother to be seen. So just kind of right off the bat, you're like Barrett's Papa. Like he's like a big Papa Bear. Like I would love like a sincere hug from Barrett.
Yeah, you know, and yeah, if you're thinking just like how we understand how like yeah, race and biology works, you're like, maybe you know, a man could have a light skinned child like that. Like maybe that's his biological daughter, but like it seems pretty clear that like you're to understand he is her father, but it is adopted.
I would not expect that nuance from a Japanese game maker at this point. Like, you know, I don't know. Japan has its own culture, and I'm not even going to dip my toe into that. But
yeah, they don't really, I think, consider the problems of race, specifically in American Empire over the past 400 or 500 years when they're developing characters and the nuance necessary to do it appropriately.
But now we meet Tifa. Tifa is in terms of like her relationship with Avalanche, she's the den mother. Mm-hmm. She is in charge of keeping home base running. She sees to their needs. She's pouring drinks. She's, you know, she's babysitting Marlene. And she's responsible for getting Cloud involved with Avalanche.
And she's super hot.
Oh yeah, she's got like double Fs. And she wears a super short, skin tight black mini skirt and a white t-shirt, and you know,
it's a bit much. But that's fan service was the name of the game in 1997. It's toned down slightly in the remake. Like there was fan uproar of like, you didn't make her tits big enough. It was like, grow up, you psychopaths. But more importantly, like her character, I think is played very well. Her voice actress is I forget the name. She was in Glow. She's like the young
Alison Brie.
No, not Alison Brie. The young girl who ends up joining the group somehow. Like the youngest wrestler girl.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, she turns out to be like Mark Maron's daughter.
That's right.
She does Tifa's voice. And,
that's cool.
It's excellent. Like all the voice work in the remake is incredible. But her specifically is like tones down the like sexualizing of the character and makes her human in a good way.
I gotta say that like Tifa is a longtime favorite with like cosplayers, just because it doesn't require that many specifics, right? It's just more. It seems to be a very, you know, it's a celebration of the female figure. That is Tifa as a character design.
Yeah.
So she and Claude, they've got history. It's not specifically romantic, but it's close. It seems that there's always been a tension of like, you know, what is a friend in terms of like a hormone brain when it comes to like male female relationships at that point, like especially as like a 10, 11-year-old. Like I had friends that were girls, but
you're always like, is this a crush?
Exactly. You never know. And you can't, it's hard to separate. Yeah. It's very hard to separate that. And Cloud doesn't seem to have, you know, he no cap. He's got no riz.
Yeah.
On fleek.
He's
ratchet.
That's well said.
Thank you.
With the parlance of the children.
The children.
Yeah.
But then we learn that they have a pinball-ovator. It's a secret. It's a secret to everyone.
Yes.
Apparently no one plays pinball in Midgar because like apparently I think he just like flipped the
because if you
bumper.
start you accidentally go down into Avalanche headquarters.
where there's like bomb schematics and like all of this shit. So that's where they have their super duper secret meetings. They get their drinks first. They need to have their drinks upstairs, but then they get their super duper secret meeting where they get to watch the footage of the reactor they just blew up on the news. Marlene is like totally a part of this in the sense that like it's like a it's like how Tupac was like raised by the Black Panthers. His mother like joined the Black Panthers.
That's a really good example. Yeah, dude. Really fun detail I noticed for the first time playing is when you're down in that headquarters, they have the news on, and the news is SIN, Shinra Inc. News.
Nice.
So like you get it's telling you the news is propaganda. State
news.
Yeah. State sponsored news, which is really great.
Man, fuck OAN.
Fuck all of them.
Yeah, dude.
Like, honestly.
Shout out to independent journalism.
Yeah, if you watch cable news, you have brain rot. I'm sorry.
Yep. So Barrett, he brings up the Cloud's past as a member of Soldier. And that seems to be a real sticking point for it's like Cloud's pretty sensitive about it. He's like, no, Barrett was like, did we fight anyone from Soldier? And Cloud's like, no, dude. If there was someone from Soldier there, we wouldn't be standing here right now. Basically, he's like, oh, if you fought me, I would whoop your ass.
Yeah,
and like that's pretty true.
Real patriarchal bravado going on here.
Well, because like I guess it should be said that, like Soldier, as we understand it, they are like the Green Berets or the top, a top tier operator,
the top tier Black Ops.
That's right.
Type shit. Yeah, and oh my god, dude, you've got to play Crisis Core.
Okay,
it goes so deep into that stuff.
I believe that
it's really fun.
But Barrett's like questioning Cloud's loyalty. He's like, you're still Shinra like lickspittle, and that gets Cloud to storm off, and he's about to just like peace out. Tifa, she's the peacemaker. She's calming the storm cloud. And were you about to say something? I think I cut you off.
Oh no. Yeah, that's we're dealing with Tifa bringing Cloud back in the game.
Yeah. And the way that she's able to like emotionally like lasso him into sticking with Avalanche, she brings up a promise that Cloud made to Tifa how many years ago? 7 years ago. And we get this nice little flashback to Cloud and Tifa sitting on top of a well or like a water tank or something like that. And it's basically as they were, 7 years younger. So at that point, Cloud would have been 14. It's, he's basically saying like, I'm going to leave there. That they're not in Midgar because you can see the stars, you can see the sky, you can see that there's plants around them. So, that like, he's like, I'm going to leave rural Indiana and I'm going to the big city.
I'm going to go to the Big Apple.
I'm going to Louisville. But this is where we get the first mention of somebody named Sephiroth. Thank you. Where Cloud says, I want to join Soldier just to be just like Sephiroth. And
way better dropping of a nugget than what I mentioned earlier.
Right now, we're just all we know is that he's
lovely
the best.
Breadcrumb.
He's the best at what he does.
Yeah.
It's genius. I mean, like by like having, and as the game progresses, we learn that Sephiroth has he's much more than just some guy in Soldier. But our protagonist starts off by admiring the antagonist, and the loyalty shifts as the veil is lifted from the eyes as we proceed.
And at this point, as players' first time, like we don't have enough background, I think, really on Soldier, Shinra, Sephiroth to like know like is that going to be a bad guy? Is that going to be somebody we recruit in our party? Like,
Well, bro, if you were spending as much time over at rpgamer.com as
well,
I
I
was.
did, but but yeah, the way the story is being told, there's still mystery here.
Yes.
That's just an intriguing name that's been dropped.
Yes. Which also has some mythological relevance.
Yeah,
to it.
dude, the tree of Sephiroth.
Yes.
From I believe the Kabbalah. It's the God. I always forget the details, but
Sephiroth!
this is something it's used in Evangelion. I want to say maybe not Xenogears. Xenosaga. I think uses it. Anyway, yeah. It's a fun part of mysticism that JRPG developers were into at this time.
I also think it probably just sounds cool being said with a Japanese accent.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those cool words, like, where you're like, yep.
Sephiroth. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Super cool. But, so, this promise that Tifa brings up, basically, it's, if you ever get really famous and I'm ever in a bind, come and save me. Kind of an open-ended, it's like, so if you're in a bind but Cloud isn't famous... is there, it's like the specifics are a little bit weird.
Then just let her hang.
Yeah. But so basically Tifa was just like, I'm going to need like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Or if I'm ever radicalized into an eco-terrorist group, I'm going to have some emotional foothold into convincing you to join our cause.
And the real payoff of that promise is way, 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 way off in the story.
Yes. So the promise... Cloud, does he remember it? Not really. But as soon as Tifa brings it up, he's like, yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a very important moment in my life. It was kind of life-changing. And it was, blah, blah, blah. This game, the story, really plays with the fragility of memory.
Yeah. Lots of unreliable narrators.
We will get to more of that later, for sure. But, yeah, memory is not perfect. And...
And it's almost like a magic.
That's a good way of putting it.
It has more power beyond just like, it's how we build our understanding of the world. It's almost like it is its own force that can move things.
That's beautiful, Josh.
Yeah.
Back in the present, Cloud and Tifa, they're at the bar. Barrett, he finally pays Cloud. I think at this point, yeah, this is still the same night before Cloud storms off after being accused of being a Shinra lackey, even though he put the bomb there. This is where it's like, Barrett.
Yeah, you did the test, dude. Yeah, he did the murders
passed.
for you.
He killed for you. Pay the man. Cloud just needs to be like, fuck you, pay me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not enough, according to Cloud, how much Barrett's paying him. But we learned that Barrett is dipping into Marlene's tuition in order to pay Cloud for this.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're doing this for the future, for the children. And, maybe if Marlene just goes to a community college instead, or if maybe she can get some scholarships, then it'll all be worth it. But also knowing at this point, the value that my college degree actually holds.
Nah, dude, it's fine.
No, dude. I wish
make her the next generation of eco-terrorists.
I wish
way more valuable.
I wish I had accrued student debt, hiring mercenaries to do my bidding instead of going to the meet and greets with they're looking for interns and fuck.
Yeah,
college is very useful in certain career fields.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just get real world experience. So then, okay. Barrett dips into Marlene's school funds, pays Cloud. Cloud agrees to do another mission. And
that's probably what we'll have to wrap today.
Yeah.
That he agrees to the next mission.
That's right. And then he sleeps on their couch in the basement.
Yeah. I'll add one more thing before we wrap this one. Is this is again in the remake where I think they make a misstep that what happens here is Cloud is introduced to Sector 7 and the community of Sector 7, which is great.
Yeah.
But what happens is Tifa helps him out. He gets a room from this woman named Marley who like just kind of takes in, I don't know, people who need taking in the slums.
This is an adult woman named Marley?
Yes.
Okay, not anything to do with the child named Marlene.
No. Like in Chrono Trigger, same name, Marl, Marley.
Oh, okay,
I forget
okay.
how they pronounced it, but
I always read that as Marl.
yeah, I always did too. But I think whatever, doesn't matter.
Buffalo
the point is,
Soldier.
so, in the remake, the next chapter after what we just covered is Cloud gets to know the community of Sector 7.
Yeah.
He does some helping out. And like they take a day or two between the mission to further develop integrating him into the community.
Mm-hmm.
The part that drives me crazy is back to what I was saying about introducing the antagonist early, introducing some of your biggest themes early. Is there's a moment where you've come to the slums at night, and then Cloud wakes up in the morning. He's seen the community of the slums for the first time, and it's really nice. And you get this like wide shot from his balcony. And that's the first time you hear the world theme music.
Oh, cool.
But like it blows that impact
I see what
of
you
the
mean.
first time we leave this gross city.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like you lose that, but what you gain is this appreciation for the culture and the community that is the slums and how they take care of each other. It's really interesting.
I'm glad you have you've got a better ear than I do in terms of like identifying like music and its placement and how it's like used. It's something that like it almost like becomes invisible to me if it's done well, right? Like, and this game does it really well.
Yeah.
To focus on Final Fantasy VII, 1997, like this game changed the way I understood how, like, this is the first time I wanted to buy a soundtrack for a video game.
Yeah.
And I still listen to this when I'm really depressed.
I listen to it a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Luckily, I don't listen to it a lot because I'm not often really depressed. But like it's
For me, it's like my comfort.
It's very comforting.
It's not necessarily means that I'm depressed. It's just like I just want to feel at home.
Mhm,
You know.
mhm, mhm.
There's one more detail I was going to add to that. I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, for me, music and how it's used is like 60 to 70%. You know,
Sure.
like
I mean, that's the old adage about filmmaking. Films are 60% reliant on the soundtrack.
Yeah,
The scoring.
I think games are very much the same, and it's why like I'm learning to appreciate them as an art form more and more and more. And as I age, I think part of what's helping me stick with them is having young people in my life, like nieces and nephews, et cetera, who are getting to gaming age. I can now see through another generation's eyes, but with all the knowledge I have as somebody who has just studied aesthetics and become a creative person and understanding like, oh, this is fascinating that's why this works so well, you know, for somebody that age.
Yeah.
It's like a fine line between that and becoming like, I'm somebody who collects Funko Pops and plushies and puts them on stream behind me. Like
It would be so funny if at some point in our lives there were Funko Pops based on you. Like with how like you have maligned the
them so
Funko Pops like several episodes of this
like
point.
every other episode, I bring it up.
Campers, if you know how to design Funko Pops, make one of Junior Counselor Josh.
It's funny because like I love watching other people like critiquing and analyzing video games.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that'll turn me off. Is like if your
they have that
background
on
is
the wall.
toys and
Yeah,
Funko
yeah.
Pops and plushies and shit, I'm like, God, grow up, you fucking loser.
Well, as a closing note, I guess, just as a thought that on Final Fantasy VII,
Please keep listening if that's your room. I'm sorry, I love you.
I just want to like, I think to make a comparison with why old school Final Fantasy VII works and why certain aspects of Final Fantasy VII Remake don't work or they don't hit the same levels that they could if they just waited. It all comes back to patience and reserving. There's not instant gratification in the original Final Fantasy VII. There's even with the story, like you have to really work some stuff out. It is not laid out crystal clear what's going on, and it rewards patience, observational like skills, and like a little bit of detective work, and like a little bit of some psych theory. There's the instant gratification is very low in terms of priorities of Final Fantasy VII, and these days, these kids, they get everything they want. As soon as they press a button and they get to watch their favorite cartoon, they watch their Mickey Mouse on their iPads, and it's a matter of patience and almost it takes discipline to withhold that. Like, be like, oh, I can't wait to. It's like watching Star Wars. And you're like, how long until someone opens up a lightsaber or whatever? It's like,
and how much do they use it?
Exactly, and like that could be applied to with
prequels
this
and all.
Yeah, exactly.
One more note on that before we wrap. We're playing the modern Switch version, which adds, there's like a
quality of life changes.
Instant God mode button.
Yeah, I haven't done that one yet.
There's a 3x speed button.
I do that one sometimes,
and it is a fundamentally different experience to play the game with those.
Yeah.
Because of exactly what you said. Is it like if you speed it up too much, it's no longer a journey. It's like a Twitter feed of things happening.
Nice.
It really is different if you are forced to be patient and like watch battles play out in real time and get that sense of these people like spending time together, building camaraderie. That happens through battle. That story is told through the time you watch these things. That being said, there are things I think could have been designed better. I spent a lot of time in my first stream aggravated about like the wind-up animation every time you use magic. That it's the same animation before. It's like, no, just burst the magic.
Yeah.
You know? Like that could have been killed, and I don't think you'd lose much. But
oh no, there'd be blood in the streets if you took that
out. Well, they kind of do in remake. Like you tell it use this spell and it goes, and it's very nice. The remake battle system is incredible. But I'm. And the weird thing is I'm at a point where it's like, I want to re-experience the game like I did at that age, but I also am an adult with other things to do. So like, I might use the 3X button a little bit in this playthrough. I'm resisting it as long as I can, but I'm somebody call me out if you watch my streams and see me use the God mode thing. I used the God mode on a fight coming up for like, just because I was like, that was like it was a compromise. I was like, I don't have time to lose this and go and replay something. Like, I know what happens. That's like kind of the only instance I'm doing that.
I think the Camp Video Games suggestion is for first-time gamers playing Final Fantasy VII, don't touch any of the quality of life differences. Like, don't touch the 3x
if you have
speed.
time, you know.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
But my recommendation would be to like let it play out the way that we played it back in the 90s. I didn't have I wasn't online that much, and so this game just became my fixation. It was like it turned into an obsession, and I mean, we'll talk more and more about this game. We've got quite a few episodes laid ahead for Final Fantasy VII.
Well, that being said, so our goal was to make it to Wall Market in this episode. We were a little limited on time today. We're not even close.
That's okay. We had a preamble. We had a lot of stuff to do, and we're on a little bit of a schedule today, so it's not a big deal.
If somebody's playing along, where do you think they should go for the next episode? To Wall Market or further? What do you think?
Yep. It really just depends on, if we press that 3X button or if we go.
Yeah.
I mean, as podcasters, not as gamers.
Right.
You know what? I do appreciate that they don't speed up the music when you press the 3X speed. Because that's a quality of life change that came from emulation. Like where they're like, we have to justify people buying this instead of just emulating it, because emulation gives you so many different options to customize how you play it. And the only problem with that one is if you do the 3X speed or if like other games that I've played on emulation where you can speed it up and like then the music just goes crazy for a little bit. And having it stay consistent is actually quite nice.
Yeah.
But in terms of where we end up next, well, you know, I don't believe in predestination.
All right, I'll just say at least Walmart it.
Yeah.
If not, go, you know, an hour or two further. If we're really at a good pace, we might go a little further.
I've got plenty of notes, folks.
Same.
So if you like what you hear, we've got a whole other season of content. We're now entrenched in season 2, and Lord knows how many episodes we're going to dedicate to Final Fantasy VII, but hopefully it never ends. But if you like what you hear, we've got patreon.com/campvideogames, where there are commentary to video game cartoon adaptations, beginning with The Legend of Zelda, and then moving on to the Saturday Supercade, and then other stuff, and other stuff, and other stuff, and other stuff.
And
my playthroughs,
my live streams of the games. That's how I do my note taking. So you get like a even more in depth. Usually, I've taken quite a bit of edibles. If you think that's fun, when we do it. So if you want a lot more detail, there's some like really. I've hidden some like deep story telling in those, and some. Yeah, it's real. They're kind of like gold mines if you're really into the stuff that I share on the podcast.
Yeah, and you get to see how good Josh is at video games.
Sometimes.
That's episode 1 of Final Fantasy VII, and please tell your friends about this show if you like it. And I am done pandering.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk next week.
Later, campers.
If you'd like to write to us, send a message to campvideogames@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram @campvideogames. If you want to become a real happy camper, you can support Camp Video Games on Patreon. For $5 a month, you'll be granted access to even more discussions about movie-based video games, game-based movies, full-length commentaries, playthroughs, and more. Whether you sign up or not, we're glad to have you here at Camp Video Games.